I've got an Apple Watch 5 that I got in 2019 and it is still going strong in 2026. And you probably don't need to upgrade either. Let's discuss. But first, if you don't know me, my name is Emily and I used to head up video production and social content for one of the UK's biggest tech publications. Now I'm doing that here, except I talk about what I want, which is usually Apple, and not buying into the constant upgrade cycle. Right, what still holds up? The day-to-day usage of my Apple Watch hasn't changed. And what I mean by that is that while my habits have definitely shifted over time, Apple has not significantly changed the function of the Apple Watch. I can still do the basics that I've always done. Quick text replies, changing music for podcasts, setting timers, and tracking the occasional walk or swim. And there's still sleep tracking with basic health functionality. This watch does everything I need it to. But if I were to upgrade, what's changed? Well, there are obviously upgraded sensors that I would appreciate. I'm getting a bit older and want to be more mindful about my health. And I've also had some health issues in the past, so it's just prudent on my part. I've definitely had the Apple Watch come in clutch a couple of times regarding my health. Being able to show doctors actual data over time has been very helpful, as well as pinpointing certain events with actual timestamps. I'm definitely a big fan of democratization of healthcare in that way, especially at a time when healthcare in America is getting prohibitively expensive and the NHS isn't really being cared for here in the UK. Unfortunately, and as much as I would love to change it, being proactive with your health is kind of necessary. Most of the other changes that got people most hyped with the new generation of Apple Watch is actually software upgrades that Apple has implemented over time with older devices. And as I said before, and this is something that I always praise, Apple does a brilliant job of keeping their older devices upgraded. I've got the latest upgrade on this watch, and despite it being like 5-6 years old, I can still access the newer features like sleep scores and the Notes app. A lot of things that Apple hypes up for new generations does end up eventually trickling down to the previous ones. Now for the physical experience. Obviously, if you look at the design of the Apple Watch, it has not changed significantly, but there are a few tiny changes that I think do compound over time, especially when you're making a jump from like the 5 to the 11. First, obviously the size. I like the size of the 5 because I have a pretty tiny wrist. I know the 11 is only a couple millimeters larger, but in a size this small, I think that does matter. The SE does have the same dimensions as the 5, but it's probably not one that I'm gonna look at if I'm being honest. Nothing's wrong with the SE, it's just a personal preference. I'm sure that when I eventually do have to upgrade and get another watch, I will adapt to the size and it'll start to feel normal, but for the moment, I'm still very much attached to this form. It's also held up pretty well. I've got one decent scratch on the screen, and then there's a good nick on one of the edges, but neither distracts me all that much. And having those on my watch definitely does not affect me in the same way that having a similar mark on my iPhone or iPad would. So the body is absolutely fine. I've only had 2 instances in which I was slightly alarmed by the performance of the software. Once was a couple of years ago when the battery was draining ridiculously fast, and I admittedly kind of thought it was the end. But in that case, I reset it, and for whatever reason, that fixed it. And the hassle of doing that is annoying, sure, but absolutely worth it if it means that my watch lives on for a few more years, which it has. The other time happened just the other day when I was actually having a little ocean swim, and it's early spring here in the UK, so it is positively freezing, and I was tracking that swim. But once I got out, my watch had just completely shut down. I'm assuming due to the temperature, which I'd never seen before, so I was momentarily alarmed. But it came back on, and to be fair, I was also very numb from that water. So I suppose it's fair that my watch also did not like that. And I don't think that was due to age. I'm pretty sure that the 11 would be similar to temperature in that same way. So I'm mainly highlighting to you how hardy this thing has been. The big things that do sway me towards upgrading eventually are cellular and battery life. I've got a bit of a niche problem in that my Apple Watch is the cellular model, but I bought it in the US and I live in the UK. Unlike phones, the watches are region specific, so the cellular function on this will not work all around the world. So I'm unable to actually use that cellular function, but I would really like to, as it would mean that I can actually go places without my phone. I'd also obviously appreciate the increase in battery life, though I don't think it's a big enough increase that it would change my day-to-day habits. The consensus is that you still need to charge the Series 11 once a day, and that is already something I do. Like everyone else, I would have liked to see a better battery by now, but I'm not necessarily upset by it. I would still be taking it off every time I go to take a shower, and that is the perfect time to charge it, so my habits wouldn't change there. Yeah, I could switch to a Garmin and get like weeks of battery life, I know. But for most people, it is not the life-changing issue that people make it out to be, unless you're generally like hiking the Appalachian Trail or something, in which case you would get the Ultra, so whatever. So I'm getting close to upgrading, but it certainly isn't time yet. There is still a very compelling case to keeping my Apple Watch 5. And I think with whatever generation you have, you can still apply this type of reasoning. I don't even think Apple intends you to upgrade every year. So don't be fooled. Keep using your old devices. They are very likely still good, even several years on.